Hello, I'm Morgan, an EFM currently posted in Zagreb, Croatia. Right now, I work part-time as a co-community liaison office coordinator and part-time as a freelance training and development specialist. With these roles, and with my sales background at a Fortune 200 company, I've been on both sides of the job acquisition process. It's actually kind of fun for me, but the same cannot be said for everyone, which is why I'm talking to you today about getting a job in the mission. With peak moving season quickly arriving and new EPAP positions currently active on usajobs.gov, I thought it was a good time to refresh your knowledge of best practices when it comes to your resume and interview. One of my passions is personal branding, and the job application process plays a big role in your personal brand at Post. So today, I'll be briefly talking about how you can shape your personal brand by rocking your resume and job interview. I don't plan to go into detail with every tip because there are tons of resources online. Instead, I'll share best practices for both and then give you additional resources at the end to help you with the whole application process. As I mentioned before, I'm also an EFM. Each year, the Family Liaison Office publishes statistics on our employment as a whole. As of fall 2017, there were a total of 11,816 EFMs living overseas. Of that, only 15% were working in the mission. Another 5% was waiting to begin their positions, but 20% as a whole is not a whole lot. When you also take into account the fact that the number of EFMs living overseas is trending up, that means even fewer jobs are available. It's so important to make the best impression when applying for jobs, which is why I'm here today. Personal branding is the process of establishing and maintaining your reputation and the impression of you in others' minds. So why am I bringing it up in a resume and interview webinar? Well, because through your resume and interview, you need to stand out in a positive way, and you do that through personal branding. Let's think of personal branding another way. If a group of your managers or the hiring committee were to meet in a room without you there, how would they describe you and your work? What words would they use? What phrases? That conversation is a reflection of your personal brand. So then you need to think about what you want those words or phrases to be. What do you want your personal brand to be? And the process of personal branding is closing that gap. Your personal brand is created whether you work on it or not, so why not help shape it yourself? Your resume and interview give decision makers a glimpse of your personal brand, and it's a great opportunity to put it on display. So let's dive into some best practices with resumes. The first thing you want to do is look at the job description and pull keywords from it. Look at sections like the description itself. Look at the skills required or the daily activities, and then look at the qualifications. And then tailor your resume to that description. You want your resume to be clean and concise. White space is not always a bad thing. You also want to submit everything before the deadline. When applying for jobs in the mission, if you've done it before, you know there are a lot of different pieces to the application process, not just sending your resume. So leave yourself some buffer time in case there are technology issues or in case you have questions about specific forms. Finally, remember that the ultimate goal of a resume is to get that interview. Let's walk through a real-life example. So let's say the management EPAP position is open at your post, and that the window to apply is now open. You look at the education and experience requirements and see that you qualify for the position. So now it's time to prove it with your resume. Identify keywords in the description that connect to your experience, and then use that in your resume. Write your resume in active voice and make each task quantifiable and concise. After you finish your resume and receive an interview opportunity, I recommend you strategically prepare for that interview. It's not enough just to memorize your resume or think about the job description. You want to also anticipate questions that they might ask you in the interview. You can do some research on typical questions for that type of position or come up with your own questions related to the keywords. It might be also helpful to talk to someone inside the position. So if there's someone currently working there, ask them about what they do, their biggest struggles, and the biggest skills they use on a daily basis. If that position's vacant, talk to his or her manager. Or if there's someone you know who's knowledgeable about the position in general, tap them for some information. What you're trying to find out is the problems that someone in this position faces, the most important parts of the job, and then how you and your experience can make the most of this position. You also want to be prepared to answer the question, why are you interested in this job? It's not okay to say, I need a job. That will not go over well with the hiring committee. Instead, think about the bigger purpose of this job in the mission. An example of an answer could be, I want to contribute to the mission by using my strengths, and this job allows me to do that. And then finally, know your shortfalls and then work on them. Make a conscious effort to learn some of the skills or qualifications that you may be lacking based on the job description. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. To prepare for your interview, it's important that you practice your answers. This is important for many reasons. One, it keeps your experience fresh in your mind. Two, it allows you to smooth out your answers, so you get rid of filler words such as like. And then three, you're able to practice in the STAR method. So with your answers, you want to think of the situation, the tasks you had, the actions you took, and the results you got. Practice it out loud to smooth it out, to manage your pace, and to really keep it fresh. You also want to prepare some good questions for the committee. This is always a positive thing when they look to hire someone because it shows initiatives and it also demonstrates that you've been thinking about how you would work in this job. Some examples of some good questions you can ask them are, how can I prepare for this position before I start? Or what are the biggest challenges in this position right now? Let's walk through an interview example. Maybe the question for the management EPAT position is, this job includes strategic planning, sometimes of multiple projects at once. How do you prioritize your work and stay organized? You could answer, based on the resume we saw earlier, when I worked at Fake Logistical, I was in charge of our company holiday meeting, which included handling the logistics for 500 people staying overnight and 1,000 attendees total. I had to not only organize the offsite meeting, I also had to coordinate with HR to present a piece on safety to the group. There were many deadlines throughout the project. To stay organized, I used my Outlook calendar to keep deadlines and meetings. Additionally, I led a meeting with my planning committee bi-monthly to stay on track and delegate tasks. In the end, the conference was successful, receiving positive reviews on the feedback forms. Everything went as planned. So in this answer, you see the STAR method at work, and you also see key words from the job description and the resume, such as logistics, HR, planning. The more you practice your experience and your answers like this out loud, the easier it is to recall them and to deliver them smoothly. When you get questions that throw you off, all of this planning comes into play. So for example, when earlier we talked about thinking of your shortfalls for the position, you can also frame these as your weakness, because it's a very common question to be asked. What are your strengths and weaknesses? And it's not enough to give a BS answer like I care too much, or I work too hard, or I'm a perfectionist. Like think of an actual weakness and then demonstrate that you're coachable and you can learn and you're working towards becoming better. So say for this management EPAT position, your strength is not in operations and you don't have as much experience in it. You can say, I would say one of my weaknesses is that I don't have as much background in operations. But since I started thinking about this position, I've actually interviewed a couple people about what they do related to operations, and I've been reading a book about how to be efficient when working in operations. You want to make sure that your answer to that kind of question is double-barreled. So you give a real weakness, and then you also demonstrate how you've been working towards it. During the interview, it's important to take your time. Pause if you need to. You may have heard a few pauses in this webinar because you can really gather your thoughts before you give an answer. Be concise. The STAR method facilitates that in your answers, but if you have a different answer or you get a question that throws you off, still try to get to the point. Be yourself, but refined. Remember that the people on the hiring committee want to hire someone that they would love to work with, or that they would love to have work for them, or that they would love to work for. They want someone great for not just the position, but for the mission as a whole. So frame yourself in that way. That's part of your personal brand. Try to make eye contact around the room as you answer questions. This avoids creepily giving eye contact to just one person, but it also forces you to make eye contact and connections throughout your interview, as opposed to shrinking down or looking off or looking down. You just seem stronger, your executive presence is there, and you just look like a person who's engaged, which is most likely what they want in the position they're hiring for. Finally, ask for next steps if it's not clear. Ask them when you'll hear about this position or when they'll begin to make an offer. And finally, it's important to send thank you notes for 2 reasons. One, it's just polite. These can be handwritten or emailed. Technology now, a lot of people email their notes. But what you want to do is send the thank you note to every person on that hiring committee. It just shows recall of who was in your room. It gives importance to every single person who took their time to interview you. And it also allows you to make one more impression on each person who makes this decision. The second piece with thank you notes is to send it quickly. A lot of research says, and articles say, within 48 hours, but I would say as soon as you can, because the hiring committee may be making decisions immediately. So you want to send in this last piece of your personal brand before they make that decision. Okay, I'll wrap up with some additional resources for your resume and your job interview. So I mentioned at the top of this webinar that there are a lot of resources out there, and I've gathered a few here, many of which came from FSI and from the Family Liaison Office. So they're geared towards EFMs. I also created a free checklist for you based on the best practices given in this webinar. I know I kind of sped through them more like, and so I just wanted to get them all in one place. So if you want to use them and implement them in your process, you have a way to look at them and check them off as you go. Click the link in the description to download yours. Thank you so much for your time today, and good luck with your upcoming job applications. I hope some of these tips help you with your entire process. Let me know in the comments if you have success with any of these best practices, if you have other secrets that have been successful for you, or just any thoughts in general about this webinar. Feel free to reach out to me on my website for more information about personal branding, life as an EFM, or any other development topic. Have a great day.